Help Desk Live viewers. This is episode 28 coming from the Burlington High School Help Desk. My name is Josh Boulos, and I'm a part of the Burlington High School Help Desk. Today we have Starr Sackstein, a teacher from New York, who is a teacher, blogger, and author, who will be joining us today and answering some questions of ours. So here we go. Starr, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Starr Sackstein. I work at World Journalism Preparatory School in New York City, actually in Queens, but within New York City school system. And I mostly teach 11th and 12th graders now, so I have 3 classes, and I'm also an instructional coach for other new teachers at my school.
Cool. Okay, so I'm gonna start the questions now. So, 1 second. 1 second, let me pull these up. Oh, geez.
What's the matter?
I'm just pulling the questions up right now. It takes 2 seconds.
Well, I know that the first question was about my educational background, so while you're pulling that up, I could kind of get started with that, if that works for you.
Yep, that would work.
Okay, so I've been teaching in New York for the last 14 years, and basically it's been really interesting. I started my career in the inner city. For 3 years, I went to the islands, to a more suburban, affluent district for a couple of years, and now I'm where I am for the last 9. And it's a really nice mix where I am right now. Kids of lots of great diversity, lots of socioeconomic sort of diversity as well. And I teach mostly journalism. I teach 2 newspaper classes, which we have an online media outlet. We don't do a print newspaper anymore. And I also teach AP literature and composition.
Awesome. And what's your favorite class to teach, you feel like?
I being that I only have 3 now, the 3 that I teach are my newspaper classes are kind of awesome because they're completely student run, kind of like your help desk. It's a completely student-led publication, and I'm really just there to keep them out of trouble and help them with their writing. But for the most part, it's their ideas, their stories, they're giving each other the leadership on the newspaper essentially gives feedback to the students. I'm even out of that dynamic as well. And my AP Lit class is just a lot of fun. We do a lot of really challenging but really interesting synthesis projects. Like right now we're doing talk show segments for Animal Farm. The kids are, basically acting out different chapters and elements of Orwell's Craft, which is really fun and interesting. So I like them all.
Okay, cool. So that's awesome. I like I love my British Lit class, and it's really a fun class to be in. Leading into the next question, what was the turning point that led you to grade how you grade your students and how you let them self-evaluate themselves?
So I have a child, and now he's in the 5th grade. And essentially when he was in 2nd grade, I received his report card, which was a standards-based report card, and every single thing they were working on in class was kind of broken down into pieces. And I got a really, really good idea of what my son knew how to do well and the things that he needed to work on. And it was around the same time I was doing report cards for my students as well. And I was thinking to myself how unfortunate it was that in my AP class in particular, I only was allowed to give them 1 grade. 1 grade that was supposed to communicate how well they were doing in my class when there were so many different things going on in my class. So some kids would get a B, and a number of kids could get a B, but that B could mean something different for any number of kids. I mean, the profile of their learning was very different. So that seems not right. I mean, if grades are supposed to communicate learning, and they weren't doing that, what was the point of them? So essentially, I started pulling back on the grades. I started talking to kids about their learning more, really amped up the feedback that I provided my students, and kind of connected the feedback to standards so that they could articulate their own learning as well. And reflection and self-assessment became a really big part of my classes. Students and I were having more conversations about their learning, and it's been really successful so far. I mean, students didn't get it at first, but they are definitely starting to get it better now.
Awesome. And what is your students' feedback on the way you allow them to self-assess? I know some students, we just had our tech team MA chat, and the students, a lot of students that joined were very positive in your grading process and how you go about things. So how are your students' reactions?
Well, here's a challenge, right? So most of my kids are in 11th and 12th grade. So by the time they get to me, they've lived through a system that's very different than the one I work with. So it takes a good amount of time at the beginning of the year to kind of situate them in the new situation that we're the new grading process, so that, you know, when they're asking what I get on that or how'd I do, it's always a reshift of a conversation. So like my online gradebook doesn't have any of those things they're used to seeing. It has a breakdown of all the standards, and then it has about a paragraph of narrative feedback that they get from me instead. I think last year was the first year that I fully implemented it in all of my classes. And I found that at the beginning of the year, they were skeptical, but by the end of the year, I think most of them liked it better. I still had my holdouts at the end who wanted me to give them a grade and not be a part of the process, but I think it had more to do with the fact that it was hard for them to assess themselves and would have preferred me to just kind of assign them something.
Yeah. After the last 2 weeks and hearing about the whole grading process, I'm really wishing my teachers would kind of incorporate that. And going off that, how did teachers in your school district respond to your grading?
It's a good question. Last year I was completely alone. Nobody was doing it also, so I wasn't getting very much support, and it would break my heart when kids would come into my room talking about test grades and, you know, this teacher took off points because the assignment was late. And I actually, as I was walking down the hallway before, I like overheard one of my colleagues saying, you know, if you don't do this right now, I'm going to grade you and it's going to mark you down. And every time I hear this is going to be a part of your grade, I'm like on the inside kind of churning a little bit, because I don't think teachers are always terribly aware of how they wield grades as a power to kind of maintain motivation, and they end up involving all of these other more compliance-based issues in with their mastery assessment. So, I mean, grades are about achievement, they aren't about compliance. And I think that we really need to separate those two things and not punish kids because they don't work the way we want them to. So this year we all are supposed to be going to standards-based grading, but there's been a lot of pushback statewide.
Cool. Okay. And in the grading policy, or in your grading policy, do students self-assess first and then your input comes in, or do you give your input and then they self-assess?
So it's like a 3-tiered process. With every assignment, they write a reflection and they talk about how well they think they're doing. And then when we finish a unit, I send out a Google form that sort of breaks down some specifics and gives them an opportunity to kind of speak to me about what they feel they're doing well, specifically what they still need work on. And then we sit down together and have a conversation about how they filled out the form. They, you know, then I'll say to them, you know, based on this level of proficiency, where do you see yourself on the traditional grade scale? And that's how I do the progress reports and also term grades. We agree, you know, we have a conversation and we agree on a grade.
Okay. And that Google form, does it have questions that you prepare for them?
It's basic. They're very general questions. So it's like, what standards do you think this assignment was assessing? How well do you think you did on them? So they're very open-ended. I don't necessarily provide them a direction in one way, shape, or form, just a space to speak their minds.
Okay, cool. And do you feel that this grading process obviously you prepare, like, you want it to prepare them more for college and the real world. So do you feel this grading process has benefited students more? Do you have any data that's reflected that?
So far, my last year's graduating seniors, I've already had a bunch of them email me and let me know that they're doing really well at school, and they're in all different kinds of schools and programs.
Mm-hmm.
My classes, with or without the grading system, are generally on the rigorous side. So regardless of how their learning is communicating, the level of learning that's happening in here is much more strenuous than they're used to.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like the grading itself isn't something that necessarily impacts everything, but the level of metacognition that they're developing makes them better learners for the future, because they can identify
Mm-hmm.
what they can do well and what they need help with, and then how to self-advocate to get themselves the help they need once they get into college.
Cool. Yeah, that's a great point. And college admission officers, how do they respond to your grading philosophy?
Most people that I talk to, the college professors who are training pre-service teachers and also people in their admissions office, love the idea of more of a portfolio style application. The problem is that's very time consuming to go through a portfolio rather than look at a transcript and one essay. So
Mm-hmm.
it would be very costly for colleges to move to portfolio based applications instead of grades. I mean, they do it for homeschooled students, and more homeschooled students are going to prestigious colleges at this point. But I think it's going to be a while before we make the shift, even though everyone agrees the shift needs to be made.
Yep. And how much more time would it take for, this is just a side note, how much more time would it take for college admissions between your philosophy and regular philosophy? How much more time would it take for them to view? Because if more students, like you said, who have the longer, more in-depth portfolio like your grading system are getting into more prestige colleges, that could be a benefit. Obviously, it would take a lot more time for colleges, but just wondering the time difference that you think would differ.
Well, I mean, as of right now, with the way things are going at my school, because we still end up with a traditional grade at the end, we still do have a traditional transcript regardless, because I'm functioning within the New York City school system. And unfortunately, if I don't follow the rules, then the system won't accept all the other grades as well. So at the end of the day, right now, our transcripts do look like everybody else's, regardless of my rebellion in my own, particular space.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if we really want colleges to be representative and really get the right people in the right spaces, if colleges saw the work students were doing rather than SAT scores, ACT scores, transcript grades, I think the work is more indicative of what students know and can do than a one-time test that norms them against the entire country, which in my belief system just doesn't really show very much about what a kid actually can do.
Awesome. Okay, and so that is all the time we have for today. Thank you so much, Starr, for joining in on Help Desk Live. It's a great chat, and looking forward to the next one. So tune in, viewers, to Help Desk Live episode 29. All right. Thanks, Starr.
Thanks so much, Josh. Have a good day.
Yeah. All right. You too.
Bye-bye.